Tonight on Reporting Scotland, 450 workers at a fish factory in Dumfries and Galloway are told their jobs are under threat. Guilty. A man admits shaking his girlfriend's 5-month-old baby girl to death at a house in Fife. 19 buildings in Edinburgh have the same defects as the primary school where a wall collapsed 2 years ago.
As Australia's Gold Coast gears up for the Commonwealth Games, we hear how Glasgow has played a significant role in their preparations.
And we speak to this man about his memories of the Commonwealth Games. Good evening. One of the south of Scotland's largest employers has announced plans to close its factory in Annan with the loss of up to 450 jobs. Pinnies of Scotland is a major seafood supplier. The company informed its staff this afternoon that the factory will close before the end of the year as it's no longer viable. Well, our reporter Willie Johnson is there for us this evening. Willie, did this come out of the blue?
Jackie, I don't think many people, if any, saw this coming. It's been a devastating day for people concerned here. Pinnies of Scotland has been a major player in the Scottish seafood industry now for more than 3 decades. A supplier to major supermarkets, a supplier to the royal household. It's undergone a number of changes of ownership over the years. Currently, it's Young Seafood Limited. Now, they've been undertaking a review of their entire UK operations, and it's that review that's led it to conclude that the Annan plant here, which was a custom-built plant, that the Annan plant is no longer viable for its purposes, and it's planning to move production from here to a sister plant in Grimsby in the north of England. Now, employment there will increase by 200, but that's of no consolation whatsoever to people I spoke to here earlier.
It's just sad, and a lot of folk are down at the moment. We've came in today, started a shift, and I say the production's getting moved to Grimsby, and that's what we've heard at the moment.
I've been here 18 years, and I've never known morale so low. So it was no surprise to me.
The way things are slowing down, we thought something was either up or behind the scenes, but nobody was getting told nothing. But to actually getting told today, the news was shocking, to be honest.
Now, Annan has had a series of economic blows over the years. The most recent significant one was, of course, the closure of the Chapel Cross nuclear power station and the high-paid, prestigious jobs that went along with that. 450 jobs going now, we're told, in a town with a population of around about 10,000. So the economic impact of that is easy to see. There's been strong condemnatory political reaction.
This is absolutely devastating news for the local workforce, a workforce that served Pinnies loyally for a number of years. There are whole families currently employed at the site in Annan, and to have so many hundreds of job losses in one blow will impact not only on the community in Annan, but the whole local economy that's already in a very fragile way.
Well, adding to that, the local Conservative MP and Scottish Secretary David Mundell described today's news as a tragedy and said the UK government was standing by to do all it could for those affected. But those affected here tonight are certainly in a state of some shock and dismay.
Willie Johnson, thank you very much. A man has admitted shaking his partner's 5-month-old girl to death. Hayley Davidson died in hospital after being found at a house in Buckhaven in Fife 2 years ago. Gordon Mackay was originally charged with the baby's murder, but today he pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of culpable homicide. Stephen Godden reports.
Hayley Davidson was just 5 months old when she died at the hands of the man who was supposed to be looking after her. Gordon Mackay, seen here on the far left, was Hayley's mum's partner. He lived a few doors down in the Fife village of Buckhaven. Today he left court in Livingston, having admitted causing Hayley's death by picking her up and shaking her. It was Valentine's Day in 2016, and after the couple spent the night at his house smoking cannabis and watching films, Gordon Mackay was left alone to look after Hayley. Within an hour, he texted her mum telling her to come quick. She arrived to find him doing CPR, telling her to call an ambulance because Hayley wasn't breathing. Gordon Mackay told police that he left Hayley alone for around 10 minutes as he ran a bath and made a cup of coffee. When he returned, he found her lying on the beanbag, cold to the touch. At that point, he said he picked her up and shook her 3 or 4 times. She was taken to hospital in Kirkcaldy, where scans revealed a bleed on her brain. Transferred to the sick kids in Edinburgh, Hayley would never recover. She died 3 days later. While in hospital, staff found evidence of older injuries that played no part in her death but were described as serious. A month earlier, Gordon Mackay had taken her in with a broken arm. It wasn't seen as suspicious. Social services were notified and didn't intervene. But the court heard that since then, NHS Fife have changed their protocols. Children arriving with similar injuries are kept in overnight and their x-rays reviewed by a paediatric radiologist. Gordon Mackay will be sentenced next month. The former soldier maintains he was trying to revive Hayley when he shook her. The judge told him he'd admitted to a grave crime and should expect to go to jail. Stephen Godden reporting Scotland at the High Court in Livingston.
19 council buildings in Edinburgh have defects like the one that caused a school wall to collapse 2 years ago. A report by the Accounts Commission is urging all local authorities to ensure public buildings are checked regularly and properly maintained. The cost to taxpayers is likely to run into many hundreds of millions of pounds. Maura Kinnerborough reports.
Looking inside walls to see if they are safe. More public buildings in Edinburgh have problems.
We're opening up external parts of the building to have a look and see where the ties are taken into the brickwork, reporting that back to City of Edinburgh Council's structural engineers.
The issues emerged 2 years ago at Oxgangs Primary. 9 tonnes of rubble collapsed into the playground in a winter storm. Pure chance, no one was hurt. Similar faults were found in other schools, many closed for months. Now it's emerged other buildings have the same problems. A public spending watchdog's warning it's not just an Edinburgh issue. Scotland's councils must not cut back on vital building checks and repairs.
Services that are not frontline services are often subject to reduction, and we're emphasising how important regulatory services can be and the impact that they may have if work isn't carried out properly.
Edinburgh Council's issued a statement saying there are lessons to be learned by all local authorities. The safety of the public's of utmost importance, and there's a need for regular, comprehensive structural assessments of public buildings, views echoed by the council umbrella group COSLA.
Go on the second bus, go on the second bus.
In 2016, pupils had to be bussed to lessons during repairs. Serious faults in procurement, design and construction spurred political criticism of the funding models used. But these 19 buildings were paid for in a variety of ways. Builders' leaders blame putting price above quality on top of a skills shortage.
Of course, the construction industry is very much willing and able to enter into right procurement contracts to ensure that quality is put well above price. But quality is absolutely essential if we're going to bring about a whole-scale renaissance in maintaining and managing our public buildings to ensure the public are not put at risk.
The bills are huge. Edinburgh Council alone needs £150 million in the next 5 years to sort historic underinvestment. But the Accounts Commission warns it's a cost which can't be skimped. Public safety is paramount. Maura Kinnerborough reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
A man has been arrested following the discovery of another man's body in a flat in the Castlemilk area of Glasgow. 2 women and 8 children were also taken to hospital following a disturbance on Rathburn Road just before 5 o'clock this morning. The women received treatment and they've all now been released. Police are appealing for information. A baby girl is being treated in hospital after suffering serious injuries at a house in Dundee on Sunday. The 10-month-old is in a serious but stable condition in hospital in Edinburgh. Police are investigating. It's hoped the Conciliation Service ACAS can help bring a series of bus strikes in Aberdeen to an end. The Unite Union has already staged a number of stoppages in a dispute over a new contract offered by the operator First. The union is threatening to begin an indefinite strike on Friday. It's been confirmed both sides will hold talks with ACAS tomorrow. The body of a man has been found on a hillside in the Highlands. Police Scotland say the family of 57-year-old Stephen Mitchell, who is from Perthshire, have been informed. Mr Mitchell was reported missing in the Strathcarron area in February. Despite extensive air and land searches at the time, no trace of him was found. On the eve of the opening ceremony of the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, it's being suggested that the 2014 Games in Glasgow has had little impact on the number of people in Scotland who are physically active. A legacy report did find that Games venues remain popular, but sport participation wasn't enhanced. Well, Katie Hunter is at the Emirates Arena in the East End of Glasgow. Katie, if we look back almost 4 years ago, hopes were high of a sustainable health benefit.
They were, Jackie. More than £400 million of taxpayers' money was spent delivering the Games. And you're right, we did hear a lot about the legacy, about encouraging more people to become more active. So I think there will be some disappointment that that doesn't appear to be the case. On the plus side, there's a track cycling session happening behind me here tonight. And today's report says that venues built for the Games are still proving popular with the public.
So I've gone from not being in a gym for over 30 years to now being in a gym 6 days a week.
Anne-Marie started exercising in 2014 to lose weight for a friend's wedding. She's now a regular at the Emirates Arena, a Commonwealth Games venue in Glasgow's East End.
My shape and my size has changed. I'm now able to get into clothes that I couldn't get into, and I'm not hiding myself. I'm not wearing the big baggy clothes and covering myself up. So that's the biggest change that I've noticed, and a lot of my family and friends have said you're getting a lot more confident.
A new report has found while Commonwealth venues like the Emirates remain popular, participation in sport has stayed stable.
The Scottish team are on their feet, the crowd is on their feet.
Organisers hoped moments like this would encourage more people to take up sport after the Games, but that hasn't happened.
Hannah Miley wins gold for Scotland.
I think there's analysis and research that shows that these big events don't necessarily equate immediately to that population level shift of activity levels, but what it has enabled us to do is to improve our infrastructure, improve the facilities, enable us to have real cultural benefits, real tangible economic benefits.
There you go, great time.
The report said many young people had benefited from the jobs and work experience created as a result of the Games. The Athletes' Village in Dalmarnock has been transformed into housing. So what do people living in the East End make of the Games legacy?
First thing that happened was they built new houses down at the Clyde, that was it. It was supposed to be for local people, but it didn't happen.
So in terms of legacy?
Nothing.
I think it's been a lot, obviously, benefit for the kids, because it's encouraged, obviously, their dad as well, even though we've done a lot with them, but it's encouraged them to do more with them.
I think there's a lot of tourists in just after it, and it was quite busy, and everything was thriving, and I think everything's went. Recently, I've noticed that everything's went kind of a downhill a bit.
The Games mean Glasgow has been successful in attracting other major sporting events like the UCI Track Cycling World Cup.
And here comes Archibald and she gets it on the line!
But while 2014 may have produced many memorable moments, it's had limited impact on the nation's health. Well, despite that, the legacy of the 2014 Glasgow Games does extend well beyond Scotland. Organisers of the Games here have played a big role in ensuring that the Commonwealth Games in Australia are a success, as Jane Lewis reports from the Gold Coast.
Renowned for its beaches and surf, but Australia's Gold Coast is about to put on a different show. And the city is ready, from transport to venues.
These Games have been a long time in the making. Gold Coast officially launched their bid as host city in 2008. 3 years later, they found out that bid was successful. Preparations started in earnest, and very quickly a special bond between Gold Coast and Glasgow developed, with Glasgow in the midst of preparing for their own Games.
Yeah, Glasgow were fantastic for us. So once we knew, and every 6 months the international body, the Commonwealth Games Federation, do a review of the planning. Yeah. And so we were actually part of that, and that was invaluable for us. And of course through that you develop personal relationships, so we could pick the phone up and ask questions.
And so you do need to share what works, what doesn't work, and Gold Coast here will do things a lot better than Glasgow, and Glasgow will do things better than the Gold Coast will this week.
Scottish influence in the build-up to these Games and around the city. This couple moved here 5 years ago and opened up a cafe. This name a nod to their Scottish past.
We started this cafe down in South Australia with a Scottish theme. There was lots of Scottish professionals around, and it kind of took off. Yeah. and then here we are, and we moved up to the Gold Coast 18 months ago, and just done the same thing again. It's taken off.
What's the most popular thing on the menu?
They're happier to try square sausage and tatty's gone, a little less likely to try black pudding and haggis, but
they're getting there.
I don't tell them what haggis is until they've eaten it.
A taste of Scotland down under, and soon the Games will take centre stage. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland, Gold Coast.
Now it's 16 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. 450 workers at a fish factory in Dumfries and Galloway are told their jobs are to go. And still to come, the Celtic manager supports his captain following this tackle in the game against Ross County at the weekend. A major project to tag and track wild salmon in order to halt the decline of the species is being launched in the Highlands. The Atlantic Salmon Trust wants to know why the fish population has decreased so drastically in the past 2 decades. Well, Jackie O'Brien now reports from the River Garry near Fort Augustus, which is taking part in the biggest scheme of its kind in Europe.
The Atlantic salmon makes one of nature's most remarkable journeys and can travel thousands of miles from its freshwater breeding grounds to the ocean and back. But for every 100 salmon that leave our rivers, only 5 return.
20 years ago you could catch, a lot of decent fish, but these days, with the fish in decline, you're lucky now if you'll get 2 or 3 fish in a week's fishing, if you're here at the right time of year with the weather conditions right, the water levels right. So there's been a huge decline in the number of fish that are coming into the system.
107 millimetres, 16 grams.
Over the next 2 years, young salmon like these being checked on the River Garry today will be tagged and monitored to find out why the population has declined by 70% in 25 years and just where the dangers lie.
Potential problems are climate change. Then as you get closer to shore, there's the pelagic fishing, netting. We've got salmon farming on the west coast, predation, barriers to migration in the river.
The tracking project will involve 6 Scottish rivers, all of which flow into the Murray Firth, where up to a quarter of all salmon that leave the UK originate. Wild Atlantic salmon have existed in the world's waterways for over 60 million years. But experts warn that if this decline isn't stopped, they could become an endangered species within our lifetime.
And let's remember that these are wild fish. They're not the farm fish that we have in the supermarkets. These are wild fish that return to our rivers each year, and we don't want to see them go, and that we need to act now to make sure that they're here for the next generation.
The race is on to save the iconic species and to find out just where Scotland's missing salmon have gone. Jackie O'Brien reporting Scotland on the River Garry.
Here are some more iconic species. Dozens of newly discovered giant dinosaur footprints on the Isle of Skye are helping to shed light on the Jurassic reptile's evolution. The 170-million-year-old tracks suggest dinosaurs were present much earlier than previously thought. Many of the prints were made by the older cousins of Tyrannosaurus rex, called theropods, which stood up to 2 metres tall. The number of school children with a significant visual impairment has more than doubled within the last decade, and professionals and parents are concerned resources and specialist teaching skills aren't keeping up with demand. Ian Hamilton reports.
Dots 3, 4, 6.
Amy's a pupil here at the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh, where she's learning Braille.
EX.
Amy is totally blind. She was born with a condition called retinopathy of prematurity because she was born early at 24 and a half weeks.
Tell me, do you like the school here?
I love it. Got loads of friends and loads of things to do, and when it's weekend time it's quite hard because you miss all your friends and you really want to stay in school because you love it that much. I spelled it right.
You did spell it right.
Amy is one of 4,300 visually impaired pupils in Scotland's schools, a figure that's doubled since 2010.
More and more visually impaired children are going to mainstream schools. Consequently, the numbers are going down here at the Royal Blind School. The ones that do come here have more complex needs.
Aaron is also a pupil at the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh. He has cerebral visual impairment, or CVI. His mother Helen explains what that means.
It means very simply that the visual impairment is due to the brain and not the eyes, but it's now the most common form of visual impairment in children in economically developed countries across the world. The increase in numbers is due to improvements in neonatal care. So very young premature babies are surviving, but there are sometimes issues.
Children with CVI may have a degree of vision, but what they see could be confusing and distressing, so this requires specialist teaching.
Could you explain to me educationally the challenges of working with children who have got CVI?
One is the range of CVI. So you do have children who are performing very well in school with cerebral vision impairment. There are other children who have severe and complex needs, and for those young people it takes a long time to get to know them.
With so many more visually impaired children in Scotland's schools, many parents and professionals are concerned there is not enough specialist teachers to support them. Ian Hamilton, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Football now. The Celtic manager says players should emulate instead of envy his captain, Scott Brown. His comments come after a Ross County player was sent off for stamping on Brown during a weekend league match. Here's our senior football reporter, Chris McLaughlin.
It's the tackle that's generated headlines for days. Andrew Davies of Ross County with a stamp on Scott Brown that resulted in a red card. Today, Brown's boss was asked about his players' treatment in general.
There's a lot of envy towards Scott Brown. You know, I see it in certain media sectors. I see it in the playing sector. I see managers, you know, also. He's a player for me that instead of being envious over it, he's a player that really needs to be emulated in his qualities.
He's not quite no-nonsense. This was him after riding a tough tackle in Aberdeen. But since arriving in Celtic in 2007, he's won a total of 14 trophies. Of the 14, he was captain for 12. Rodgers believes he could slot in at the very highest level in England. On social media, opinion was split. MJJT says Brendan Rodgers is 100% correct. But Gavin says, I guess we'll never know because he just likes his comfort blanket, playing against teams with a fraction of Celtic's budget.
Yeah, he's one of those characters. I had it with Luis Suarez. You know, every ground you went to, you know, Lou always got it, but that only raised his performance level, and Scott's the same.
Chris McLaughlin, reporting Scotland.
Well, as we heard earlier in the programme, it's less than 24 hours to go until the opening ceremony of the 2018 Commonwealth Games. So we took the opportunity to ask a man who knows a thing or two about winning medals, Sir Chris Hoy, about his own Commonwealth journey, which started over 30 years ago.
I was 10 years of age when the Commonwealth Games came to Edinburgh in '86. My dad called me through and said, oh, there's cycling on telly, because I was doing BMX racing at the time. And he said, it's a velodrome down at Meadowbank, and it was the bronze medal sprint ride-off with Eddie Alexander riding for Scotland, and he won the bronze medal, and I remember just thinking, this looks pretty exciting. I remember going into the velodrome the night of the kilo in 2002 and just being super nervous. So I went out really hard, fast first lap, second lap was good, third lap the pain starts to really kick in, and the last lap was just a matter of, you know, hanging on for grim death.
A new Commonwealth Games event record and a lifetime best for the likeable Scot.
Only time in my whole career I got to hear Scotland the Brave, and it was really emotional, and just I remember looking around and it felt like a home games because there were so many saltires, so many Scottish flags. It was amazing. It was just, yeah, one of those nights that you remember forever. Well, Melbourne was totally different because we went in, first of all, personally went in as a favourite for the kilo, defending champion, and it didn't go to plan, and it was a really disappointing performance from my perspective. I underperformed and I felt I'd let the team down. But we had this second chance. We had the team sprint coming up.
Scotland here in the back straight. Craig McLean, followed by Ross Edgar, and then Chris Hoy to ride the anchor lap. 107 the difference, 2 men left on the track now. Chris Hoy racing it out for Scotland, and Matthew Crampton for England. Less than half a lap to go. They're on the way back now to their original starting station, throwing the points at the line. There it is. England second. Scotland take the goal.
And I remember just throwing the bike for the line and just hoping it was enough, and hearing the 2 gunshots. So the gun fires when you cross the line for each team, and it was literally like almost one bang as the 2 teams cross the line. Bang, bang. And I thought, I didn't know who'd got it, and I looked up and we're looking at the scoreboard, and I just saw Scotland with the 1 next to it. The people who say, it's past it, it's a thing of years gone by, I would put money in the fact most of those people haven't been to a games themselves, and that is my answer. Yeah, definitely, plenty of future in there yet.
Oh, nice memories from a lovely man. Now, let's change the tone slightly. After a grey day this evening, let's get the weather. Kirsty.
Indeed, thank you, Jackie. Good evening to you. Yes, it's been a somewhat bleak and wintry day of weather across much of the country. Indeed, some of us have had some fresh accumulations of snow, and that wintry theme isn't quite finished with us yet. Indeed, tonight and during the day tomorrow, we do have a Met Office yellow bee aware warning. Further accumulations of snow across central and northern Scotland. That could lead to some difficult driving conditions, something to bear in mind if you are going to be travelling. This evening and tonight, rather cloudy, further outbreaks of rain and sleet to low levels, and snow across the high ground of the likes of the Grampian area through southern and central parts of the Highlands, becoming really quite heavy and persistent. Around 1 to 3 Celsius typically tonight, perhaps freezing to -1 Celsius in some sheltered rural parts, and the risk of ice on any untreated roads and surfaces. So into tomorrow, and we dawn on a fairly cloudy note. Again, some outbreaks of rain and sleet to low levels. The snow becoming confined to the high ground and the hills of central and northern Scotland, something that bit drier and brighter feeding into the west. For the afternoon period, I think across the Northern Isles and the likes of Caithness, some wintry showers and perhaps some brightness to come here. For much of the northeast, however, through central and southern Scotland, outbreaks of rain continuing and hill snow, although much drier and brighter through Argyll, the likes of Skye, the northwest Highlands and the Western Isles, with some spells of sunshine. Temperatures, though, still really struggling, around 3 to 6 Celsius at best. Add on a keen northerly breeze and it will feel colder still. Into tomorrow evening, though, that rain, sleet and snow pushes away into the North Sea. A cold night will follow with clear spells, and Thursday a ridge of high pressure will afford us a largely dry day, just a few wintry showers in the far northwest. That's the forecast. Jackie.
Thank you, Kirsten. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. 450 workers at Pinney's fish factory in Annan in Dumfries and Galloway have been told their jobs are to go. The company informed its staff this afternoon the factory will close before the end of the year as it's no longer viable. And that's Reporting Scotland. Our next main news is at 10:30. Until then, from everyone on the Reporting Scotland team right across the country, enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.